Okay, let's go over the torque converter, one of the pieces I have to check in. Sure enough, when I looked at the torque converter, it's tough to look inside. You can turn some stuff, but I did find the problem of why the car died, lost all gears, and that had because the torque converter failed. And we'll get to that piece. So what is a torque converter? It's made up of a few pieces. Torque converter is the car that actually transfers the amount of energy and torque from the engine to the transmission, and that's done through a torque converter. Well, we have an impeller, you have a turbine that spins inside the torque converter, and what happens is there's three gears that when you push the torque converter on the transmission. One connects to the impeller. This connects directly to the transmission, and this is spun by the engine. Okay. The next piece, which actually connects, we have a stator that plugs onto here. That stator handles the return fluid coming out. The next piece is the turbine. This piece makes the transmission go, and that fits in here. So that fits in here. Then we have stator, and then we have the impeller, which makes up the unit. We can take these apart. Then we have the converter clutch damper mechanism, so we'll get to that. So what happens is, and then the final piece, we got gears. We got gear in here, stator. We got gear in here that turns the transmission, and we have the final gear inside of here. That's where this piece is the pump shaft. This piece fits into the torque converter, and this piece goes to the pump shaft in the pump body, or the valve body. And we can show you right here. Here it is. Here's the valve body. Here's where it goes, right here. We talked about a bearing issue possibly. There's the pump shaft that pumps the fluid. The torque converter is always filled with fluid. So when we turn this, when the thing is spinning, it's turning this pump shaft, pumping fluid. The fluid is always filled inside here. So what happens is, as the impeller spins, fluid is going through all these fins, and it's throwing fluid to the turbine, and that's spinning the turbine, making the transmission go. Now the car can go. So it's running at engine speed, and when it flows through this guy, it is accepted by this guy, and it's returned through these fins, and it's returned through the stator here. Typically, when the fluid flows, it wants to come back in the opposite direction, but this prevents it from coming back in the opposite direction, the same direction as the engine. So we're getting the thrust from this guy and the return thrust with the fluid coming back through this guy. So it's two things propelling the car. And the torque converter, typically it's there because the transmission's spinning at one speed and the engine's spinning at a different speed. So it's trying to rectify each one, convert between them. Okay, if it's a direct connect, if you just direct connect it, then the car is most likely going to conk out every time. It's almost like a manual transmission. You let the clutch out, don't have enough gas, the car stalls. So this is what happens, spinning. It's all done by fluid, transmission fluid spinning this mechanism, making the transmission rotate. And that's good and dandy until about 40 miles an hour or so. So one of the problems is if you just left that, you're still going to have a difference of the engine speed versus the transmission speed. Wastes a little bit of gas mileage. What you want is a one-to-one connection, where this is spinning at the same speed as this. And to do that, what they do is they engage another mechanism in the transmission. This is called a clutch damper. But what it does is, if you look in here, when the speed of the transmission gets up to 40 miles an hour or so, this engages. This is actually pushed down into the body of the torque converter. And as you can see inside here, all around the outside, there's a pad. It's almost like a brake pad in here. And what happens is this thing, you can see this nice surface around here, gets pushed, forced. So now everything this is spinning 1 to 1. These are not really used anymore. This takes over and starts spinning everything to a 1 to 1, which now increases your gas mileage. So it's almost like a manual transmission now. So that was a neat kind of piece that they added to a torque converter assembly. Now the problem with this torque converter is that inside here, let's see, I just want to see, there's a little hole. And in that hole was supposed to fit the shaft, the pump body shaft, so it would fit in just like this. Well, what I can do is I can just turn it. Well, this thing's supposed to turn like this and turn everything. So what happened was the teeth got stripped. When the teeth got stripped, this was not turning anymore, therefore no fluid was being pumped into the torque converter. So there's not enough fluid, can't make the car go. So it lost all gears. Now this is kind of a crummy design, I think, looking at it. So here's a typical washer. And it's about the same diameter as what they have in there. So what they did is put some teeth in there, took this and said, okay, I'm just going to weld it right in. Well, look how thin that is. So when I have all these teeth sitting here, well, geez, there's not a lot of teeth in this piece for this thing. So if you get a lot of torque on this thing, it starts, stressing these teeth in here. Eventually, it just grinds them down. I mean, this should have been at least double, I think, the thickness. So it was a cheap-ass design by Ford to do that. So what happened was, the teeth in here, when this thing is spinning by the engine, it's turning this pump shaft, getting the fluid. So now I can just turn it. Nothing. So that little piece, that little washer like this caused a failure of the, I was hoping to see, well, maybe not, I don't know, hoping to see a more dramatic failure than a cheap-ass little failure like that brings the whole car down. Oh well, enough of my rants about Ford, but it was a learning experience. So that's pretty much the operation of a torque converter. It's kind of a neat thing. It's amazing that fluid is spinning all this stuff. This thing weighs about 40 pounds or so it's pretty heavy. So just wanted to give you that update. Certainly need a new torque converter for this rebuild. There's no question about that, but it's nice to see the inside of ones. I wish somehow they designed it so you can take it apart and look at the pieces without, I use my 4-inch grinder to grind, just cut a ring right around the whole thing to take it apart. Once I saw that this thing was spinning inside, I knew the problem and said, well, might as well cut it apart to get a better look at it. Okay. That's it for now for the torque converter.